Good evening, everybody, and welcome to your path to home ownership. Got quite a lot of you joining us this evening. I think we'll give it 1 minute, let a couple more people join, and then we'll get started. Cool, numbers are racking up, so I think we'll get started. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to your path to home ownership. My name's Sam Cox, and I am one of the sales managers at Peabody. I'm also being joined this evening by Anthony Hall, is a director at Sensio Financial. We've also got Matt Johnson, who is a partner at Alexander JLO Solicitors, and we have also got Conrad, who is one of our residents at one of our developments in Southmere.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you, guys. So a little bit about Peabody and who we are, just in case you guys aren't aware. So we are one of the UK's oldest and largest housing associations, and we started around 160 years ago, of which was just one man and £150,000, and have grown into an organisation with 108,000 homes and 220,000 residents. So it's grown significantly over the years. One ambition of ours, as you can see on the screen, is to achieve net zero carbon in our new and existing homes by 2050, of which I think would be quite a big achievement for us. And we've also been recognised and awarded more than 60 prestigious awards, including the Sunday Times Home Builder of the Year and even Standard Best First Time Buyer Home. We do also invest around £11 million each year through our community foundation to support people to be healthier and happier. So we are a very, very large organisation. So the main reason for tonight is to understand shared ownership and all the other parts that come with it. We're going to run a poll, and that is going to start off with a couple of questions with regards to owning your shared ownership home. So we're going to bring up a couple of questions for you, and you will have around a minute to pick your options from there. All right, I think we'll check out the answers now. So where are you in your home ownership journey? We've got a large percentage are still exploring your options. And then it's very evenly split across saving for your deposit and actively looking for a property. I think this is part of obviously your journey, and this is one of the main reasons why you may have signed up for this webinar, is to explore your options. Learn a little bit more about shared ownership, what you've got to do, and various different steps that you may have to take in order to become a homeowner. So yeah, very, very key question, and can clearly see the answer is very common. Another is, what is your main motivation for wanting to buy a home? And the most popular one was stability, as well as independence. And I think these are obviously key when buying your first home, second home, whatever it may be. I think, when you may be renting, living with family, getting yourself out there, looking for your first property when it's shared ownership, I think it just gives you that independence and that stability. So yeah, it's clearly a very popular answer. And then the final one, which is obviously why we're all here this evening, is, do you know what shared ownership is? And a very, very high percentage have said, yes, I have a good understanding. And a small percentage has said, no, I'm not aware of shared ownership. So perfect timing that you are here this evening. And we're going to help you obviously understand a little bit more about shared ownership. So taking your first steps onto the property ladder, shared ownership obviously gives you that opportunity to take your first steps. or even a second step if you're selling a home and want to move into something slightly different. There's three key parts to understand when it comes to shared ownership. So as a usual purchase, you will also have your deposit. This does tend to be between 5% and 10% of the share value that you're purchasing. You then have a part mortgage. So your mortgage will be dependent upon the share you purchase. And with Peabody, you can purchase between 25% to 75% of the full property value. And then you'll pay a subsidized rent on the remaining share. So an example, just to give you guys a real sort of basic overview of how it would break itself down. So if the full value was £400,000, you'd be purchasing a 25% share, of which equates to £100,000. You'd then look to put down around a 10% deposit, which equates to £10,000. You would then be paying a £90,000 on a mortgage. So you'd have that monthly mortgage cost, and then you'd have a rent for the remaining 75% share. Benefits of shared ownership. So it's, as we know, it's an affordable way to get onto the property ladder. You're buying a percentage share, and that share value combined with your monthly rent, service charge, it all tends to equate to a lower figure than what monthly rent would be within the areas that you're purchasing. Your monthly costs are generally cheaper through shared ownership, like I just said, in comparison to private rental. You also have the option to buy more shares in your home, which we call staircasing, and I will come on to that shortly. And then you have security in your home, in your property, and you can grow your equity, and you're not renting and paying off someone else's mortgage. So there's a lot of security in it. Eligibility for shared ownership. There's not too much. There's not many restrictions, but there are a few parts that we do have to abide by. And for a home within London, your income for the household cannot exceed £90,000. And then outside London, it cannot exceed £80,000. You don't necessarily have to be a first-time buyer, but you do have to be selling. If you are selling a home, then you have to be under offer in order to proceed and reserve one of our homes, and then obviously complete on the process in order to complete on the shared ownership home. You can't owe any money on unpaid rent or mortgage previously, and you must be able to show that you can obtain a mortgage based on your current credit report, and that you're able to pass money laundering and fraud checks, and then that you understand that you can afford your ongoing costs with buying a shared ownership home. The shared ownership journey. So it's broken down here into 10 easy steps, of which you'd go through on each individual development, and they would guide you through the whole process. So you guys are starting out here by registering your interest in shared ownership, but you could also go on to register it against an individual development. From there, you then look to take a financial assessment just to understand your finances and what the monthly costs would equate to. You then would go view your home, and if you liked the particular property, the floor plan, the layout, the spec, you'd look to pay your reservation fee, of which is £500. You'd then come to a point where we'd be offering you the home once we've allocated the property. Your next step would be a full financial assessment and AML check, so your anti-money laundering check, of which gives us the opportunity for you to meet your financial advisor, who will go into more detail shortly. Who will go through what your monthly cost would be, what mortgage products you can get, and just really get to the nitty-gritty part of purchasing your home. You then appoint a solicitor and apply for your mortgage, secure your mortgage and complete your required paperwork. And then once all of that is done, you have your exciting part of exchanging contracts and completing and moving into your new home. So very, very simple. So one of the parts earlier that I mentioned was staircasing, and this is a very common question of, can I buy a larger share in my home? Answer in short is absolutely yes. From the start, you can purchase 25 to 75% share at a max. And then once you are a owner of the property and you're living there, you can then go through a process of what's called staircasing, where you would gradually purchase more shares in your property in small increments of what is affordable. And once you've done that, it then changes what your monthly mortgage cost would be, and it adjusts your rent. So that would reduce in line with the higher share that you purchase. What are the benefits of staircasing? I think I've touched upon a couple of those just now, but in a nutshell, when you purchase more shares, you're then going to be reducing your monthly rent, of which all in all is a benefit to yourselves because you're going to be growing your equity. In time, you can also staircase to 100%, of which would then mean you're paying no more rent. And then a benefit from all of this would be that you're increasing your sort of value and your ownership within it. And then when it comes to you selling, you obviously own a higher share value there, and that would equate to larger sort of equity when moving forwards onto your next step. So some top tips when looking at a shared ownership home, and this is what we advise all of our buyers, all of our sort of early applicants like yourselves, just to sort of really review in order to get your sort of best position when it comes to viewing and reserving. So checking your finances, just making sure you understand what you can afford and what it's going to cost each month for your desired home, which then comes onto your location. So once you have an understanding of what you can afford, you can then narrow it down to the location and start building a wish list. So I would say start looking at, whether it's the location, proximity to trains, motorways, your schools, whether it's the parks, local shopping, whatever it is, start building that list once you know your location. You then start booking up your viewings, getting yourself down to site, viewing what's on offer, and then that gives you, the best position to start understanding what you can buy, and really falling in love and moving into your new home. I'm now going to hand over to Anthony from Sensio, who is also going to be running a poll. Over to you, Anthony.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Sam. Thanks for joining. I think really great that 82% of people have a good understanding of shared ownership. So that's a really good start, really positive. I'm going to try and run through the mortgage side of things and how the affordability works. And I'll try not to use much jargon. And I look forward to your questions later. If you start the poll for me.
Oops.
So we've got two questions here. The first one is, have you spoken to a mortgage advisor? The second one is, what is your biggest concern about getting a mortgage? Quite a few options on the concerns. That should be enough time to think, Sam. Let's see what the results look like.
Yeah, all good.
So have you spoken to a mortgage advisor? Okay, 64% have not, which is quite common actually, because people tend to want to find a property first before they speak to an advisor. We'll talk about the benefits of speaking to an advisor earlier. What is your biggest concern about getting a mortgage? 22% affordability, almost 20% deposit, so linked deposit and affordability. Credit score, the least. Interest rates, not as high. That's good. So to be honest, looking at those results, what I probably would expect, affordability, deposit, and monthly payments sort of being the most common, which is where I guess shared ownership comes into its own. The deposit is lower, as Sam spoke about, as well as the affordability is better than buying on the open market. So hopefully, as I go through my slides, we'll be able to answer some of the questions about the affordability, how it works, and what you're actually looking at. So we want to move forward to the next slide. So how do we assess the affordability? So ultimately, with shared ownership, it is a requirement of all registered providers like Peabody, that you have to do an affordability assessment with a qualified regulated mortgage advisor like ourselves at Sensio. They have to be experienced in shared ownership. We've been doing shared ownership, and me personally, for the last 17 years, so for quite a while, doing shared ownership. What we're going to do is make sure that you can afford the initial share. So if you're buying a new build property, you're looking at, can you afford to buy that 25 to 75%? Because at the beginning on a new build, the maximum is 75%, and that assessment will determine where you sit and what is affordable. You are encouraged to buy the share that you can afford. So although that the initial share may be up at 25%, if it's affordable for you to buy, say, a 40% share, that's what you'd be encouraged to buy. And in terms of affordability, what we are looking for is the mortgage, rent, and service charge, and any commitments you have, like loans or credit cards, any deductions from your salary, don't exceed 40% in London of your net income, or 45% typically outside of London. But again, because it's down to the advisor to go through and make sure you're comfortable, there are scenarios where that 45 and 40% might be exceeded based on your outgoings. So they'll look at a budget planner to see exactly what all of your outgoings and your disposable income is. Now, the mortgage that you apply for, if you require one, will typically be between 2.5 and 4.5 times your gross salary. And that is typically based on what lenders will lend. So if you've got a joint application, it might be that it's 4 times. That being said, there are some mortgage providers that may lend 5 times. So that isn't set in stone. This is kind of what we're looking for as a guide. Next slide, please, Sam. So if you do your assessment with Sensio, and bearing in mind, as I said, we've been going for 17 years. We do thousands of assessments every year. Our process starts online. So you'll have a link that you would register, you'll create an account. And when you create the account, you go in and you put in your personal information, and you put in your financial information. So we're going to ask you your income, how much savings you've got, how much deposit you've got access to. Your credit history, we'll need to know that. So if you've had any missed payments or you've had a default or CCJ, it doesn't automatically mean that you can't proceed. We just need to understand the details, and then the advisor will review and then let you know whether or not you are able to proceed or not. We'll also check your affordability with banks and building societies to make sure that you can get a mortgage. There are a number of factors that will come into play when we're looking at your circumstances. So your credit score and your credit report, so the history. The number of applicants will also be factored in, your age. Typically, mortgage lenders will only lend up to typically 70, but there are some lenders that will only go up to sort of 65. But then again, as I said, it's based on individual circumstances. So everyone is an individual. If you've got dependents, they'll also need to be factored in as well. Your residency status. So one of the questions I'll get asked quite often is, can I apply whilst I'm on a visa? The answer is yes. If you are on a visa or you haven't been in the UK for more than 2 years or 5 years, you can still look to apply. It may just mean that your mortgage options are limited. Again, I mentioned lending criteria. Different banks and building societies will have different policies. And this is a reason why it's really important that you speak to a mortgage advisor who specializes in shared ownership, because they'll know what criteria is available in the market. All of the assessments are manually done and have human oversight. So the system will look at it, and then they have that human oversight to determine whether or not it's affordable or not. Next slide, Sam. So in terms of preparation, Sam gave some good advice earlier, sort of to understand what your affordability is before. Start getting your ducks in a row in terms of what property, what area you're looking at. In terms of that affordability assessment, what you need to do is we're going to need to know where you live, obviously. So proof of address will be needed. ID, so passport, driving license if you haven't got a passport. If you are on a visa, we will need a copy of your visa or share code that you can obtain from the gov.uk website. Proof of income, obviously really important. So any taxable income, we'll need to see pay slips for the last 3 months if you're employed. If you're self-employed, we are usually looking for at least the last 2 years of SA 302s or accounts if you're a limited company. That being said, if you've only been self-employed for a year, we can look at it, and it is again subject to individual circumstances. So if you've recently gone self-employed and you've only filed 1 year, it doesn't mean that you can't apply. It's just that ideally we would like 2 years. Your deposit, so we need to make sure that you've got evidence of the deposit, so proof of the savings that you've got. If you are getting a gift, that is also acceptable. The Bank of Mum and Dad are one of the biggest lenders in the UK. So by all means, you can use a gift to buy shared ownership. Anyone gifting the property will have to provide evidence, though, of the funds, where it's come from. Sam mentioned AML checks and money laundering, so it's all part of that. So we'll need to see ID and statements for giftors, and that can be from friends or family. Most banks and building societies will want it to come from family, but there are one or two that will accept it from friends. Financial commitments, I mentioned credit reports. We'll need to see a credit report to see exactly what the conduct of your credit is. Also, just to double check that you've got the right balances. So if you've got credit cards, you've got the right amount outstanding, because it might be circumstances where you can reduce a credit card commitment to enable you to be more affordable. If you've satisfied defaults or CCJs, we're also going to ask you for evidence. Importantly, we're going to ask you for the last 3 months bank statements. And I'll give a quick tip here in terms of budgeting. Get your 3 months bank statements together, have a look at that, and create yourself a spreadsheet just to see what your outgoings are. That will help you make a judgment for yourself as to what you think is affordable. When you take out a mortgage, there are some fees as well that you're going to need to pay. Our mortgage administration fee is 495. We do charge a discounted fee for anyone that's an NHS worker. So maybe there's some of you in here who work for the NHS, you get a discount. Mortgage lenders will have something called arrangement fees, but these do vary. It depends on the mortgage product, not necessarily the lender, because different lenders have different products. So they vary from anything from zero up to approximately £1,000. There are instances where it may be more than that, but typically you're looking at 0 to 1,000. And then a surveyor, a valuer, will go out and value the property. So whatever the market price that's being sold for, when you take out a mortgage, the lender, the bank, or building society will instruct their own valuer survey to go out and tell us how much the property is worth, and also yourself. Sometimes that can be free. Other times you'll have to pay for it. The average is between £300 and £400. Next slide, please, Sam. So the mortgage market, what does it look like now? Obviously, it's been quite a roller coaster ride in the mortgage market over the last few years. The good thing I would say is that 2025 demand is up. So there are a lot more transactions going through, more this year than there was last year, which is good for the market. Rates have come down again. We ended 2024 with interest rates being relatively high. The base rate was high. That's now come down. Whether or not rates will continue to come down, maybe ask me after the budget. I'm not sure at the moment. Anyone who would like to predict it, I'm not sure, but I think we're probably in a steady market now. I don't realistically see rates sort of shooting up anytime soon. So positive signs of interest rates. Mortgage availability is increasing. We've got the most amount of products available since we've had since COVID. So that's really good. We've actually surpassed with some lenders the products availability. And there are a few myths with mortgages and shared ownership. People think, you're not going to be able to get a high street mortgage, or it might be difficult to get a mortgage, or you have limited or restricted choice. Not the case. There are 33 lenders that will enable you to buy shared ownership through, of which 29 of those lenders actually will allow you to put down a 10% deposit or less. So there are lots of options. Affordability rules have been relaxed as well this year, and the regulator are actually reviewing that even further. So your borrowing capacity has got a lot better this year. If you buy a new build property, and there are incentives as well, and like cashback. So some lenders will offer you free valuations. You might get a lower interest rate if you're getting a new build because they're more energy efficient. So there are lots of pros of getting new builds. Lender availability, as you can see, some high street lenders that you'll be familiar with. If you look at the top line, you've got the likes of Barclays, Nationwide, Lloyds, Halifax, Virgin. So you have a good mix across those 33 lenders. And if you just look at the bottom line, there's some building societies that you probably are not as familiar with, but they're all very flexible and big lenders in their own right when it comes to the shared ownership market. So there is good choice. Next slide, Slam. So just on interest rates, the current Bank of England base rate is 4%. The next meeting is on the 6th of November. Again, like I said, I wouldn't bet on it coming down. I think they'll probably hold again. But the good news is that that rate has come down quite a bit this year, and I think we'll see it probably move again next year further down. I'm forecasting rates will get down to about anything between 3 and 3.5% over the next sort of 12 months or so. But don't obviously this has been recorded, but don't hold me to that. In terms of mortgage rates, no one, not a large percentage of you were concerned about interest rates, which is really good because I think interest rates, in all honesty, are where they are now is pretty much where we're going to be for the foreseeable. And actually, these rates are actually normal. We had a period after the credit crunch where interest rates went really low, not sub 2%. But I think those days are probably behind us for a long time. I won't say they'll never come back, but rates of 4, 5% actually are normal rates. Depending on your age, you'll remember rates being 6, 7, 8%. We're not there. As you can see, if you've got a 10% deposit, you're going to get a rate of 4.4, which is really good. If you're looking at a tracker, and even lower if you're going for a fixed rate, which most people do at 4.26%. So interest rates, give or take, are going to be around the sort of 4% mark based on the deposit that you've got access to. So in terms of Sensio, so we are specialists in shared ownership. We've worked with Peabody for a long, long time. And the process is quite simple. As Sam went through earlier, you view your property. When you decide that you want to put a reservation down or you get allocated that property, you put that offer in. Peabody will say, yes, you can proceed. We'll contact you to arrange a financial assessment. So you'll meet with a broker. It usually takes about an hour to an hour and a half. You upload all of your documentation. You have that meeting with the advisor. They make sure you meet the eligibility and it's all affordable. And from there, we'll look to move forward with a mortgage application for you. You get your mortgage offer. That goes over to the solicitors and Peabody solicitors. You'll also get a copy. They do what they have to do, which Matt will explain. You exchange contracts, and then you're able to move in. But we're central to all of it. So the mortgage broker is really important because from the moment that you actually start the journey, the broker is going to be with you up until completion. So is shared ownership a good option? Because I've worked in shared ownership for a long time, people think I've got a good opinion and an understanding of shared ownership, obviously. So they ask me, does it make sense, Anthony? Is it a good idea? So I always have a graph like this that shows you the difference between renting and buying on the open market and doing shared ownership. So if you see this property here, the full market value of 500,000, if you were to go on the open market, a 10% deposit would be £50,000. Obviously, a significant amount. Most people in this group are looking at saving. That's a lot of money to save. You need a mortgage then of £450,000, which again, if lenders are going to lend 4.5 to 5 times your income, you need an income then of nearly £95,000, which is way above the average, even more than the cap for shared ownership at 90. So as you can see, not that obtainable. Then if we look at the monthly mortgage costs, it's pretty much £2,500. So your total cost with a service charge, you're looking at £2,700 if you're buying on the open market. So again, that affordability bit quite tight to buy on the open market. And if we compare that with the shared ownership option, same value of 500, you can buy a 25% share. It's £125,000. Your deposit, 12,500 at 10%, so significantly lower and more obtainable. The mortgage that you need, 112.5. Again, with those income multiples that banks give, much more obtainable. you need an income of 63,450. So much better. If you then look at the monthly costs, you've got your rent at 859, service charge 225, and then the mortgage payment significantly lower because the mortgage is only based on the share. So that's £616. So the monthly cost is £1,700. That's over £1,000 cheaper per month. In terms of income, over £30,000 better, over 37 and a half better on a deposit. So the comparison, the numbers really speak for themselves. It's quite a big difference. So my opinion on shared ownership is that it's a fantastic option for people that don't have the figures or access on the left-hand side on the open market.
Excellent. Fully agree, Anthony. And I always try not to be biased towards shared ownership, but it was my first option when coming to buying a home, and I did it many years ago. And I think when you look at those figures for shared ownership, what can you get to rent within London, central London, and all your outskirts of London for 1,700 a month? There isn't much. And comparing that and taking that 600 a month of a mortgage and building your equity, I think that sort of, yeah, it says a thousand words in itself. So yeah, appreciate it, Anthony. Thank you.
No, thanks, Sam.
Cool. So the next part, and another very, very key part to your buying process and your journey, is your solicitors. So we're going to be joined by Matt, as I introduced at the start, from Alexander JLO.
Good afternoon. Oh, rather good evening now, I suppose, but good evening, everybody. Yeah, look, I'm here. I'm not going to try and bore you with too much legal speak. But before we get into that, and sort of give you hopefully a bit of my wisdom over the years of doing this, and I'm a partner at Alexander JLO Solicitors. I see that there is a poll, so why don't we give that a go and then see where we get to.
Can you see the questions on the screen, Matt?
I can. So the questions we've got are, how confident do you feel about your understanding of the legal process of buying a home? Now, the rating scale here, I think 1 is meant to be not that confident, and 5 is meant to be, you know as much as I do, which would be great to know. The second question is, which, if any of these legal processes, feel most confusing? Conveyancing and contracts, lease terms, stamp duty and other fees, and timescale and milestones. So we'll give you just a minute to click a few buttons. And Sam, you can tell us when you're ready.
We can. We'll give it 5 more. Oh, there we go. We're finished.
That's I have to be honest, that's sort of what I was expecting, but actually not too bad. There's quite a lot of you guys who seem to think, seem to know a fair bit, but I'm gauging that from what's been said before on the polls that have been sort of put out there before, that you guys really have seemed to have done your homework, which is something I'm going to touch on a bit, and when we move on. But equally, as I would expect, there's quite a large percentage of you that don't really understand it, and that is why we are here. And that is why you've got Anthony, you've got myself, and you've got Sam, because effectively, whilst I know Sam is part of the seller, we do form a team. We are all acting concertively, independently, don't get me wrong. Anthony and I will work together on your behalf, but we all want to try and get you into a property that you want. So that's not too surprising. Then on which of the legal processes do you feel most confusing? And it's pretty much evenly split across all of them, and I do not blame you at all. And what that highlights to me is it is extremely important to trust the team that you have on your side. And I'll get more into that when we move on to my slides. So thank you for giving us that. Sam, if you can just move on.
Can you see that?
Yeah, thanks. So guys, look, I'm a partner at Alexander JLO Solicitors. It's a firm that was set up 50 years ago this year. We are not just a conveyancing firm. We deal with anything an individual may need throughout their lifetime. Our ethos is very much a client for life. We look after conveyancing, family matters, litigation, wills and probate, you name it, we pretty much do it. But what I have done over the last, I don't even remember how long now, but a significant period of time, is really focused on affordable housing. Anthony in his one of the last slides showed you the benefits or the differences between affordable shared ownership and also just standard residential. And whilst we've always dealt with residential, it is very important, especially with our ethos of a client for life, that we help everybody. And so over the years, we've really got into this. Now, the process itself, and I know that Sam and Anthony have briefly touched on it. It looks very simple from where they're sitting. There's sort of, as Anthony said, he's in the middle, and then you've got your mortgage offer, and then you exchange. And Sam said a pretty much a similar thing. I wish it was that simple. But it is kind of simple for the likes of myself and for my team because we do this, we're specialists. And that's something I really want to, just before we move on to the process itself, just dial into. Um, when you guys are looking around to try and decide on who you want on your team, and I'll keep stressing that word team because they are there to act for you. We're here not because we're getting nice kickbacks from Sam and the Peabody team. That's just not true at all. They are sellers. They want to try and sell and get the job done as smoothly as possible. And also, you will be moving into properties that they'll be managing. So they want the people that are going to be living in those properties to have a good, to term Americanism, customer journey, so that you feel comfortable in the environment in which you're now living. In order to do that, they will rely, or rather, they will recommend people that they know will give a good customer journey to their buyers. They know that we know what we're doing and we are experts at what we do. And the reason why it's very important that you have people that know what they're doing, it should be fairly obvious, is that 9 times out of 10 things will go smoothly. But that 1 time out of 10 where it goes wrong, you need people like myself, like Anthony, who are specialists who can unblock things. Now, there are 101 solicitor firms and no doubt 101 broker firms out there that you can find on the internet that will be cheap, should we say, and they will offer the world. It's not about whether they're cheap, it's not about whether they will offer the world, it's whether they can actually deliver on what they've promised. And that is why it's so important to ensure that you have a team on your side that are specialists in shared ownership, that have the relationships with the brokers, and the brokers with the banks, and the solicitors with the sellers' solicitors. The Peabody will have their own solicitors, and the relationships are really important. So that should it go wrong, and I'm not saying it will, please believe me, it very rarely does. But if it does, at least you have the right team on your side to be able to unpick it and move things forwards on your behalf. So it's really important. And obviously I'm here representing Alexander JLO and Anthony's there representing Sensio. There will be other solicitors, other brokers that will also be recommended by Peabody. We're not a one closed shop. So, whoever it is you choose, do your homework. And that's key with everything. And that's why you're here tonight. Do your homework, find what is good for you, and then put your trust and faith in the people that you have gone with. And if you do that, then hopefully what is a pretty complex process becomes a lot more straightforwards. So that's something I will just, really want you to take home with you. Just do your homework. Look on the portals. You no doubt see myself and Anthony on an awful lot of the portals and recommended by an awful lot of people. That's because we are good at what we do. And I really do stress the fact that you need to have that. So just with that in mind, I'll move a bit onto the process itself. Now, there is a lot more involved in this, but again, if you've got your team, hopefully it will be as this simple, and these key milestones, as they're termed, are all you need to worry about. The in-betweens and the sort of running around in the background, you can just leave to us and we will do it, and we will get in touch at the right time for you to do the right thing. So you only ever have to focus on what is next in front of you. And that again will mean that this stressful process is less stressful. And the reason I say that is because the very first keystone, which is a MOS, well, a MOS is a memorandum of sale. It effectively is just a piece of paper which has your details on it. It will have the details of the property that you're buying. It will have the various pricing on it. It will have who the sales team are at Peabody. It will likely also have who their solicitors are at Peabody. And hopefully, more often than not, it will also have who the broker is as well, such as Anthony and Sensio. So it's got all the details, and it's basically a crib sheet to start the process. So we know who all the players are involved. Now, what that does and what is triggered by that is you paying a reservation fee to Peabody. Now, at the very outset, they will ask for a certain amount of money, and what that will do is it's sort of showing an intention to buy. More information on that, I'm sure you can get from Peabody directly or the sales team, so I'm not going to go into that. But what happens is when you pay that reservation fee, it will trigger release of the memorandum of sale. Now, on that memorandum of sale, at the very bottom, usually, it will show that there is an exchange deadline by which you must meet. That memorandum of sale starts the clock, and the clock starts ticking effectively. And again, that's why I go back to having the right team on your side, because if they are not acting concertively or they don't know what they're doing, then that time disappears very, very quickly. So it is really important to do that. Now, when the memorandum of sale is released, that usually then triggers about 48 hours later release of the contract pack, and that goes to us. And in it, it will be your contract, it will be your lease, it'll be your lease plan. There will be other documents, potentially heat supply agreements, potentially what's called the key information documents, which you must read, which you'll be given at the outset. But there's an awful lot of documentation that gets sent over to us. Now, what we will do is we will process all of that, but we can only start processing that once you have instructed us. And that is key as well. So with the instruction process, what we do is we have a dedicated app, bespoke app, where once you've got a quote and you like it and you've clicked on the link in the email that says you want to move forwards, we'll send you our app, and it's very straightforward from there. You just upload your documents via the app, you enter all your details, pretty much like we all are used to via our mobile phones or on our iPads at night. It's really straightforward. And once we have that, and you've also paid a bit of money, which again we can do through our app, it's you've instructed us. So what we need is for you to have instructed us, the contract packs come over, and then that's when the process really begins. Just a word of warning, especially if you go I was about to say off the reservation, but it's not quite that bad. But if you go with a random broker, they may say, don't instruct the solicitors until you've got your mortgage offer. That's the worst piece of advice I could probably give you, or you will receive, because the time, as I said, that started with the memorandum of sale being issued and you paying a reservation fee is continuing to be eaten away. Now, if you don't instruct until the mortgage is released, which is, they're quite good at the moment, but mortgages can take a bit of time before they get released. It means you're playing catch up. Now, the solicitors, if they're any good, will be able to deal with that. However, the time that you then have to review an awful lot of documentation and the report on title and various other bits and pieces will suddenly feel very claustrophobic. You will be really, really under pressure. So the best thing I can say is instruct at the earliest opportunity, and then everything is ready to go. Now, I can only talk about the process I have. I can't talk about anybody else's. So once we've received the contract pack and you've instructed us, we then send out what we term our welcome email. Now, that welcome email itself is basically designed to introduce you to who your case handler is within my firm. There are a number of different teams, so we always have different people that can always act for individuals, but you'll have one designated case handler. It will then go through a bit of the process, explain a bit about the time frame that you'll get. Now, the time frame itself is always, a best estimate at this stage. It's something that will be updated as you proceed, and that is usually done through the case handler. But it gives you a rough indication that, 2, 4, 5 weeks will be your exchange deadline. But that's something you'll already know from the discussion with the sales team. And then on ours, at the very bottom, it also sets out who I am, gives you all my personal contact details as well, because we really do pride ourselves on trying to be there for everybody. And, you guys are first-time buyers. Well, majority probably are first-time buyers. And we need to hold you by the hand and take you through this. And it can seem a bit daunting. So if you ever feel like you needed more, then obviously at our firm, you have direct access to one of the partners, who's myself. And we're here to help. I'm pleased to say that thankfully the work we do, my contacts are hardly ever used. So I think we're doing something right there. But they are there as just that extra level of reassurance. So what we're doing in the background once we've received the contract pack is reviewing it all, making sure that effectively all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. We've dealt with we're dealing with the inquiries with Peabody solicitors to make sure that when you come to buy this property, you know that you have what's dubbed good legal title, and you are then able to buy, sell, staircase, remortgage, and basically deal with that property however you wish, without any worry or concern over the legal aspect of it. Once that is done, we summarize all of our legal research into what we call a report on title. And that effectively summarizes all of the key legal aspects. It's not exhaustive, but it is a very good source that takes you through each of the individual documentation that's provided. And along with that report, you will then get all of the paperwork. What we try to ask all of our clients is to just hold off raising any inquiries prior to receipt of this report, because usually, and you've got to remember, we've been doing this a long time, 50 odd years is quite a while. So what we try to do is preempt any questions that you may have and contain them within the report. So we ask that you wait for that, you read through it, and my best advice is when going through a report on title, whether it's with us or with anybody else, is just to jot down your queries as you go, maybe putting notes in the margins of it or generating an email so you can list your inquiries all in one. And that means that when you send off your inquiries to your solicitor, they have one email that they can respond to. Now, that's not making it easier for the solicitor because the solicitors know what they're doing. What it does do is that it allows you guys to have all of your responses in one place. And in that respect, it's very easy. There's a similar thing on the report and title. I can see I'm being moved along, so I do apologise there. But that's it. So take your time, read through it, and the more time you give yourself, the better. Do you want to move on a slide there, Sam?
Yeah, cheers,
Thanks.
Matt.
Then once you're happy, obviously we have to deal with your lender and we act for them as well. We'll need to be doing a similar sort of report with them to deal with their conditions. But once you're happy and the lender's happy, then we can move forwards to exchange. And it's very straightforward to our side. We just simply need effectively your money, your deposit. And as Anthony already pointed out, that deposit is can be 5 or 10% of the share that you're buying. And then your emailed authority to sign a contract on your behalf. From there, the next bit is just completion. It's either an agreed fixed date with the seller if you're buying a stock unit, or it's completing on notice. But I'm not going to go into too much of that now. The sales team will be able to explain that to you. And effectively, all we then need from the seller's solicitors is their completion statement, and we deal with everything else with you, getting you to come in, sign all the documents, and then before you know it, you complete. So effectively, and then we also deal with your post-completion registration as well. That is a very brief, in a nutshell. I could go on for hours, but you don't need that. So in that case, I will probably draw it to a close, I think. Is that right, Sam?
It certainly is. Thanks, Matt.
Thank
Very
you. No
detailed, very
worries.
thorough,
Thank you.
very brief, you say, but I know this is an extremely important part for all of you when it does come to buying. So, yeah, thank you, Matt.
Thank you,
Um,
Sam.
Conscious of time now for what we've got left. We are joined by Conrad, as mentioned at the start, who is a recent homeowner over our development in Southmere. So, Conrad, evening, welcome.
Good evening, everybody.
Thanks for joining us, Conrad. I am just going to be asking a few questions to Conrad, just to give the audience a little bit of an understanding of obviously, I guess, who you are and why you bought, and a little sort of deep dive into that process and different parts that you found within it. So the first one, I guess, is when did you decide to look at shared ownership, and what led you to make a decision to buy on that scheme?
So I was living in Kent during lockdown, and having previously lived in London, I decided that that's really where my heart was in London. I mean, it was enjoyable being in Kent, being in the countryside during lockdown, but I was still commuting to work. And I mean, post lockdown as well, commuting to work. And I decided that, yes, I needed a plan to get back to London. Bit daunting because obviously property values and what have you. Yeah, I mean, living in Kent by comparison looked very affordable, but definitely London was the place for me. So that's when I decided I needed to come up with a plan. And then I started speaking with a financial advisor. And he recommended to me that the best option for me, age and what have you, was to look at the shared ownership route. And considering I'd been renting, which circumstances meant that I was renting, it wasn't my first choice, but it was the only option I had at the time, having previously been a property owner. So I was definitely very keen to get back on the ladder. And yeah, so I saw an opportunity, having done some research, and I identified Peabody as the people that I wanted to have a conversation with. Once I'd also identified my location. Yeah.
I think that's spot on, Conrad, and I think that supports everything that I said at the start when it comes to planning, checklists, those key parts for what you want and what you're going to pursue. And for you, obviously living in Kent, getting yourself back into London, the main parts were obviously your commute. That daily commute it's key, and if you're reducing it significantly, then your day-to-day life is going to be much better. So yeah,
Well,
definitely a good part.
significant is the key word. The comparison from commuting one way, best part of an hour, 45 to 50 minutes, getting to work, to reducing that to where I'm living, to from my doorstep, getting to the station, getting to my location at the time, 15 minutes, which to this day, I mean, I've lived it, but it's still amazing when I think about it, how it transformed everything for me.
I
And
can imagine. No, it's wicked, and yeah, it's like you say, it's changed your life. So
yes.
good, excellent, Conrad. Another one. Just going back to, obviously we've discussed various different processes when it comes to viewing, when it comes to your mortgage, when it comes to your legal side. How easy did you find the overall process, and was there any parts that you found really hard or difficult?
I think, I mean, you guys, Peabody, have been doing this for a long time, so I think I don't think they could make it any easier if they tried. I mean, as the conversation as the other panelists have spoken about, in terms of doing your research, doing your homework, you really have to do that without going over the same ground. Yet understanding what your affordability is, identifying where you want to live. Obviously, that's going to be a factor in terms of where you work. You want it to be, you want to have good accessibility to a station, and to get to your job with a minimum amount of hassle. So very much do your homework, and once you've done your homework, then you should be prepared. You put yourself in a position where you can say, right, okay, so who are the best people in the market in terms of shared ownership or what have you, who has a good background, who has a history in this environment. And for me, doing my research with my limited knowledge, Peabody, I identified Peabody as being the guys that I wanted to speak to. And also as well, fortunately for me, the location was perfect in terms of Abbey Wood, South Mere, and it just so happened that Peabody had a development, and they're investing so much money into the area to regenerate the area. So everything, all the boxes were ticked for me. And yeah, so that aligned nicely.
Good. No, wicked. And that ultimately answers the last question, which was that has the home ownership changed your life, which I think clearly by your passion and the answers you've given it certainly has. So yeah, it's great. And you're a massive advocate for Peabody and what we do and what we offer. And I think yourself, Conrad, you've obviously gone through the process. You've you've done your research, you've done your digging, you've worked out what you need, what you want, and you've made it fit. You found something, and yes, it turned out to be perfect. So it's yeah, it's refreshing, and it's nice to see that everything we do come to life. So thank you, Conrad. Um, Thanks for joining us this evening. So, going to shoot on to the last couple of slides. Conscious that you've been with us for quite a while now. We've got a couple of new schemes that we just want to highlight this evening. So we've got Lombard Square, which is 1 and 2 bedroom shared ownership homes in Plumstead, and they'll be launching early November. So they'll be coming very, very soon. So if you are on the lookout, get yourself onto the database, sign yourself up and get ready for the launch. And there's some key details there, which you can see on your screen. We've then also got West Ham Village, and that is studios 1 and 2 bedroom apartments at West Ham in Zone 2. And that is also shared ownership, of course. And that is a huge, huge scheme with very, very good transport links. And it will in time have its own personal entrance into West Ham station itself. So very, very nice development. And that is available to view from November onwards. Throughout the presentation, we have had a whole bunch of questions coming through, of which we have had some selected for us. I'm going to delegate them out, and we'll give some quick answers, and we'll try and wrap it up as quickly as we can. And we'll start off with yourself, Anthony, if you're still there. I know it's been a while since you spoke.
I'm still here, Sam.
Not falling asleep, which is good.
No,
You did touch on it earlier, but we'll ask it again. Do you need a mortgage broker who specialises in shared ownership? And if so, why?
just to echo what Matt said, the team that you have is really important. I think the broker that you use specializes in shared ownership because they understand the eligibility requirements. They understand the banks and building societies that do shared ownership. And where, if Sensio, for example, specializes in shared ownership, we're going to make things a lot smoother. And I think is really important. If you don't use the allocated broker, for example, we work with obviously a lot of schemes with yourselves, with Peabody. There are other brokerages that also specialize in shared ownership. So even if you don't use us, I strongly recommend you to specialists because that bank or building society, that a broker who doesn't understand shared ownership might be the wrong one for you. So you're getting the right advice if you use a specialist.
Excellent, thanks, Anthony. There is others in the chat with regards to sort of mortgages and finances, but I'm going to skip over to yourself, Matt, and just ask a question with regards to stamp duty and how it works on shared ownership. If you can give us a brief overview of that, please.
Absolutely. So thanks, Sam. So look, stamp duty is very complex. It shouldn't be. It's got a lot more complex since the March changes happened. But at the end of the day, in a nutshell, you have two options when buying a new build property, which is shared ownership. You can elect to pay stamp duty on the share that you're buying. So I think the example that was given was £100,000. So you could pay stamp duty on that £100,000, or you could pay it on the full market value, which was £400,000. But then you also need to bear in mind that there are first-time buyer thresholds, which is if the full market value of the property is £500,000 or more, then you are not eligible for the first-time buyer allowance. So normally, and basically, and then normally people when buying their first shared ownership property will choose to pay on the share on the 100,000. So the example that was given at the very beginning, if it's £400,000 full market value, you're electing to pay it on £100,000, you will probably, well, not probably, you will definitely not pay a single bit of stamp duty if you're first time buyer. if you elect to pay it on the full £400,000, then you are above the £300,000 threshold, but you're still under the £500,000 first-time buyer. Effectively, what I'm trying to say to you is, it is complex. There's a great website called it's the government website, which I can't believe I'm actually saying is a great website, but it is a stamp duty land tax. If you put in stamp duty land tax, HMRC, or the actual website is www.gov.uk/stamp-duty-land-tax, then it gives you a lot of information there. It also gives you a calculator, so you can actually play around with the figures, and where it says the rent, it asks you for the first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year rent. That will be the annual rent that you are paying on the unpurchased share. So again, that is something you can deal with. We can't give stamp duty advice because it is a tax advice. We're not allowed to do that. But if you do want to discuss anything like this, please do contact us. You can do that. Our website is london-law.co.uk, and we're happy to try and assist with any questions that you've got. So please bear that in mind. But again, this is why you need specialists on your side so that they can assist you, take the pain away, and give you that advice. Okay?
Excellent. Thank you,
Can
Matt.
I just very much say that the broker that you use will discuss stamp duty. Again, as Matt said, we can't give tax advice, so we're not going to give you taxation on the stamp duty, but obviously you need to factor any stamp duty into your upfront costs as well, so that the broker will help you.
Excellent. Cheers, both. Like I said, obviously time conscious. There's been multiple questions coming across, and quite a few towards Peabody and myself. The most asked is, what is the process of selling a shared ownership home? I'll summarize it real brief, and then you guys can get off and watch EastEnders. So selling shared ownership, you'd go through an initial application process with Peabody, of which you will be able to find access in the application form on our website. You'd fill out this application form, which would sort of trigger that point of what you need to do and what will happen for your next steps, of which will be ascertaining a RICS valuation for your apartment, your home, whatever it is, of which you'll have to pay a small fee for that valuation. That will decide what the value of your home is at that time. And then at that point, Peabody will have an initial nomination period to try and sell your property on our portals, on our website, and to our database. I believe that is a 6-week period. And for the last few years, our resales team have exceeded all targets. So there has been a lot of resale transactions. So it shows there is a second-hand market for shared ownership, which is amazing, and a big reassurance for yourself if you are looking to buy. And then if Peabody don't sell within that 6-week period, you have all rights to go to the open market and instruct a independent estate agent to sell that share of your apartment or home. So there are various different steps, but in a nutshell, that is how it will go. But there is further guidance on our website. And there's also our website you can see on the screen here. So peabodynewhomes.co.uk. If you want to take that down, take a picture, jump on there, upload all your details, get yourself registered for our latest developments and our upcoming developments, and start that process of buying your first or your next home. So yeah, thank you, Matt, Anthony, Conrad, for joining us. I hope you guys have found it useful and informative and not too boring. And hopefully you start your purchase and you purchase with us in the near future. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Cheers.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you. Good night.
Good evening. Good night.
That's a good night from him.